topic for today are Camellia Japonicas. If you haven't noticed already, they're all flowering in the gardens. Winter is traditional flowering time for the Camellia Japonicas, and very showy plants, of course, masses of flowers. One of the fewer plants that actually flower in winter, and they're great for winter colour, right through generally to around about at least September, flowering in Melbourne. The Camellia Japonicas, as the name suggests, originate from Japan. So they prefer a cooler climate, and they lend themselves to growing well in Melbourne, but they do need to be protected from hot afternoon sun. So best probably planted in an easterly aspect where they receive maybe a little bit of morning sun, or filtered light through overhead trees, and then protected from the hot afternoon northern or western sun, which can burn the leaves. Now, in saying that, often when they're established, you see very old Camellia Japonicas growing in gardens, very large established plants which are growing in a full sun position. And as they get older, they become a little bit more sun tolerant, particularly if the roots are protected from that really hot, drying sun through the summertime. They will tolerate the sun. In extreme hot weather, they tend to get a lot of yellowing in the leaves, particularly new growth, which is a result of burning from the sun itself. So best grown where they are protected from hot sun. If need be, some of the darker varieties are probably more suited to a hotter sunny position if need be. Particularly things like reds, they're quite tolerant of sun, but you may still get a bit of discoloration in the leaves due to the sun itself. So what do they need to grow well? Pretty hardy plants generally, as long as the soil is well drained. Melbourne soils can be quite heavy and contain a lot of clay, which can keep soils wet, particularly through winter months. So the water needs to be able to drain away from the root system of the plant. So it's important that initially when garden beds are prepared, they have a good depth of decent soil before the plants can grow into the clay underneath. In most cases, the plant will avoid the clay. It will tend to stay in the better soil above the clay. So it's important to make sure that the drainage is good. They do require a reasonable amount of water through hotter weather, drier weather. Good probably 2 to 3 days through the week. Quite heavy waterings through those dry periods will help to sustain them. Once they are well established, they are pretty tolerant. They don't need excessive amounts of water. It's just the initial few years while they're establishing. Bearing in mind they are considered a slow growing shrub, so it can take quite a few years for them to mature, but it's a great foliage plant even without the flowers. They have the dark green glossy decorative leaves throughout the year. Very self-sufficient sort of plants, not prone to many insects or diseases at all, so generally pretty easy to grow given the right soil conditions. The colour range are in the thousands now. There are probably more varieties that are more popular than other varieties. I've brought a couple of examples in today just to show you. Probably the most popular Camellia Japonica is this one here. This is a variety called Brushfield's Yellow. And it's not a true yellow flower, it's more of a cream scented flower with a white outer petal, but a very showy flower, large flower, lots of them on the plant, and they flower over a long period of time through the winter. And particularly showy on those duller days in Melbourne through the winter when we don't have a lot of sun anyway. The Camellia flowers are striking against the dark foliage. of the plant itself. So that's Brushfield's yellow, and you can see how many buds are actually on this particular plant still get to open. So when you think about the value that you would get out of the plant as far as flowering goes, it's a very showy sort of plant. This is another variety called Hari Withers, which has obviously the pink flower and a different shaped flower to the Brushfield's yellow. This is more like a water lily type flower, multi-petaled, and again long flowering, loads of buds still to open on the plant, and a nice subtle pink. The beauty of camellias, you can mix and match the colours. You don't have to have all the same. You can, because they all sort of blend with each other. The leaves are similar. The flowers are obviously different, but the colour range tends to all complement each other. And Hari Withers is that nice, subtle, soft pink. Another popular variety. There's a whole range of pinks and also reds in the Camellia Japonica range. This particular variety here is a variety called Bob Hope, which is a full showy red camellia with very bright red flowers with the centre yellow stamens. It flowers again prolifically. This smaller plant still has a lot of buds yet to open, and over a period of time you'll get quite a few months flowering out of all the camellias. No, a good 3 months at least through the winter months. And it's nice to have them in the garden to give you winter colour. We generally aren't in the garden a lot in the winter time. We spend a lot of time inside, I guess, through the colder weather. But having camellias in the garden make it good for looking out onto the garden itself to enjoy the flowers. They also are good for picking. You can actually cut off camellia flowers and use them indoors as a cut flower. Some people have them sitting in, say, a bowl of water, and they can look quite decorative floating in the water, and they will last quite a long time as a cut flower in the house. It's important also at planting time to feed camellias. As I mentioned earlier, the soil needs to be well drained. So a bit of preparation prior to planting the plants will go a long way. Adding compost to the soil, particularly if the soil is lacking and hasn't had any nutrition for a long time, if it's a new garden bed that you're preparing, for instance, it's worth adding some sort of organic matter. And there's various types that we have here at the Greenery. ZooGro is a good organic mix for a whole range of plants. If it's well incorporated into the soil at planting time, it gives the new roots on the plants something to grow into. You can also add at planting time a general sort of fertiliser. Now, there's various types, but this is a specific one for camellias. It's a Camellia Azalea and Gardenia fertiliser. Powder, it's easy to apply. You just sprinkle it onto the soil and water it in. This would be done on a regular basis, probably every 8 to 10 weeks through the warmer months of the year. I'd recommend feeding at least twice a year with camellias, once in spring, once in autumn. It just helps to keep the plant growing well, helps promote flowering, and also helps to add nutrition to the soil. And that's a very easy one to apply. It's just a matter of sprinkling it on and then just watering in around the root system of the plant. It can be incorporated into the hole at planting time, just to get them, the plant established. But ongoing on a regular basis will help to keep the plants healthy as well. There's a bit of an old thought on camellias not liking any application of lime around the plant. It's a bit of a fallacy. They are a plant that naturally grows in acid soils, but adding a product, say once a year, like Dolomite Lime, which has calcium and magnesium in it, won't hurt the plant at all, and it also helps to keep the dark glossy green look to the leaves. So that would be applied, say, once in winter every year, and then the Camellia food would be used ongoing through the warmer months of the year. So Dolomite could go on now, for instance. It's also good on a whole range of other plants in the garden, particularly things like English box. But it won't hurt to use it on your Camellia, sprinkle around the base. It's a powder, easy to use, watered in, and that'll provide them with that calcium, which is what keeps the leaves green, basically. They'd appreciate that. Good waterings, as I mentioned, through hotter, drier weather, particularly while the plant's establishing. Watch out for occasional pests. They're very good on very tolerant of insects. There's not many pests that really worry them too much. Most people have, if any issues at all, it's generally regarding watering. So well-drained soil, regular watering as they're establishing. Once they're well established, they would need probably minimum watering throughout the year. So look out for all the varieties in the nursery now. They're all starting to flower. In the gardens, they're looking terrific. It seems to be a very good year for camellias this year, relating probably to the weather that we've been having. They are traditionally a cold climate plant, so they love the cold conditions that we're experiencing through this winter. Question?
Do you recommend mulching?
Good idea to mulch, yes.
Any type of mulch you'd recommend?
That helps to keep the roots cool in the summer, particularly when camellias prefer that. They don't like the hot baking sun on the root system. So any general mulch would be okay. Compost is always a good mulch because it has the added benefit of breaking down and improving the soil as it does. But any mulch is fine, providing it's not used immediately against the trunk of the plant. The mulch can build up heat around the trunk and cause issues. So keep a bit of a clear area around the trunk, and the mulch will also help to keep moisture in the soil through those dry days. So also helps with the weeds, which reduces the amount of maintenance work that you might have. So look out for some of the varieties I've mentioned. As I say, you can mix and match. If you're one that likes just a single colour in the garden, then there's lots of varieties that would be suitable for that as well. Very versatile plants, easy to grow, long flowering, and they'll reward you every year with minimal care.